Imagine this. It's the mid-1800s, and electricity still hasn't entered everyday life. The very idea of a computer doesn't exist at all. Back then, when people said calculation, they pictured something simple: paper, ink, and endless rows of numbers stretching on and on. And in a world like that, a 17-year-old girl quietly says, one day, machines won't just calculate, they will think too. Her name was Ada Lovelace. Ada was born in 1815 in England. Her father was the famous romantic poet, Lord Byron. But Byron's fame came with scandals. He was emotional, free-spirited, and impossible to fit into rules. Ada's mother, Annabella Milbank, was the complete opposite. Disciplined, coldly rational, in love with order. She was highly skilled in mathematics, and some even called her the Princess of Parallels. Their marriage was like a storm colliding with ice. Just a few weeks after Ada was born, Annabella left Byron, and Byron left the country, never seeing Ada again. So Ada grew up knowing her father without ever truly knowing him, through fame, rumors, letters, and a strange, aching emptiness. Annabella made a decision. My daughter will not become like her father. In her eyes, Byron's dangerous side wasn't just his behavior. It was imagination, emotion, poetry. So to save Ada's mind, she tried to chain her to mathematics, and so Ada's childhood became strict. Mathematics, logic, science, day after day. But here's the paradox. Annabella wanted to protect her daughter from imagination, and yet inside mathematics, Ada found an even greater imagination. As a child, Ada was often sick. Sometimes she couldn't get out of bed for months. It stole pieces of her childhood, but it strengthened something else, the ability to be alone. She could think for hours. She looked at everything and asked the same questions. How does it work? Why is it like this? What law is hidden inside it? One day she became obsessed with a strange project, studying the flight of birds. She sketched wing structures and even imagined designs for a kind of flying machine. This wasn't just a child's fantasy, it was a clue to how she would someday see machines. To Ada, a machine was never just metal. A machine was an idea turned into a body. By her teenage years, Ada was already inside high society, aristocratic circles, elegant salons, and scientific conversations. In those days, scientists gathered in the homes of the wealthy too, because science wasn't just knowledge, it was prestige. And then, one evening, Ada met someone who would leave a permanent mark on her life, Charles Babbage. Babbage was working on the idea of a calculating machine. He imagined devices that could perform, mechanically, the calculations humans did by hand. His most ambitious project was a concept he called the analytical engine. This wasn't a simple calculator. Babbage was thinking bigger. The machine should receive instructions, work step by step, and produce results. That night, when Ada heard the idea, she saw something others didn't. Everyone else said, "This machine will calculate." Ada asked, but what else could it do besides calculation? It was a question that shattered the limits of her era. Yes, Ada knew mathematics, but that wasn't her only gift. She spoke two languages at once, the language of logic and the language of imagination. To her, Babbage's machine looked like a shadow from the future. She believed that if a machine could follow instructions, then with the right instructions, it wouldn't have to work only with numbers. It could work with other symbols, too. And that idea is the foundation of the modern computer. Because today, computers don't only calculate, they play music, create images, write text, edit videos, and even speak with us. Ada's vision was exactly that. A machine can process symbols as long as there are rules. Later, Ada translated a scientific paper and added extensive notes, and those notes are what carved her name into history. Because in them, she explained the analytical engine more clearly, and most importantly, she gave a step-by-step sequence of instructions for the machine. Today, we call that an algorithm, meaning if the machine had been built, Ada would have written a program for it. That's why she is often remembered as the world's first programmer. But here comes the most dramatic detail. The machine was never fully built. Ada wrote the program of the future for a computer that was never born. It's like writing a letter to the future and watching it never reach its destination. Ada was a woman of high society. The role expected of her was clear, calm, obedient, proper. But Ada didn't fit inside that role. She had to hide her thoughts, because in that era, a woman standing too openly in science made many people uncomfortable. Sometimes Ada even signed letters in ways that hid her gender, so her ideas would be taken seriously. And it wasn't only society pressing down on her. Inside, Ada carried her own storm, her father's shadow, her mother's strict control, her fragile body, and a mind that never stopped running ahead. There's another part of her life people speak about less. Ada became drawn to financial risks, even trying to build systems based on probability. Some accounts say she tried to win in risky games like horse racing, using mathematical strategies. And that detail says a lot. Ada wanted to use mathematics not only as theory, but as a weapon against life itself. But life isn't always fully controllable by mathematics. And in the end, Ada went through heavy periods, financially and emotionally. It affected her health. By the end of her 30s, she faced serious illness again. In 1852, her condition worsened. Medical options in that era were limited, and treatments were often painful. Historical records frequently list cancer as the cause of her death, often connected to gynecological cancer. And Ada died at just 36. 36. For many people, that age is a beginning. But for Ada, it was a half-finished ending. Before she died, she asked to be buried beside her father, Lord Byron. It felt like a final step toward a man she never truly knew, a shadow she chased her whole life. She had never seen him, but somehow she had always felt him. When Ada died, her ideas weren't widely famous. Without the concept of a computer, very few people could understand the future she saw. But years passed. Science advanced, electronics was born, computers appeared. And when people looked back at her notes, they were stunned. Because Ada Lovelace saw the soul of the computer before computers existed. Today, her name lives on, in the history of programming, in computer science, and as a symbol of women's place in science. Because she wasn't just a mathematician, she was someone who thought in the language of the future. And the most tense question inside her story is this: if Babbage's analytical engine had been built, what kind of world would Ada have created? Maybe she would have written more programs. Maybe she would have founded her own school. Maybe the idea of computer science would have been born a century earlier. But history isn't written with maybe. History is written with what happened. And what happened is this: Ada Lovelace stepped ahead of her time. Few people saw it, even fewer understood it. But as time passed, her whisper became a world. Because some ideas aren't accepted immediately, they simply open the door to the future. And Ada was one of the people who opened